Yeah, so let's jump into audio. Like I said, there's a lot about audio. It's very complicated. It's extremely important with video. You can have really great video, but if your audio is trash, people aren't going to want to watch it. So audio is in a lot of ways more important than video, and there's not a whole lot that you can do about it to fix it in post. So it's something that's very important to get right out in the field. Like I said, I stole a bunch of notes from this guy named John Hansen. He used to be the audio technician for Rum Jungle Media. He doesn't work for them any longer, but he had a lot. He came and presented at my previous job, and he had a lot of really great points. So I stole a lot of things from him, and hopefully I'll be able to explain them as well as he did. We'll find out. So why does audio matter? Well, unless you're making a silent film, obviously audio matters, and it matters more than video. It has a lot to do with the story pacing and the tone and the emotion of your video, which a lot of that is done in post with like music and things like that. So know your source. So kind of this is similar to like A-roll and B-roll. Like A-roll is considered like the interview, and then B-roll is like the supplemental footage that goes along with the interview. And same with like audio. Your primary audio is going to be the sound that your audience is focusing on, which generally is like the interview. And then secondary audio is something that kind of goes along with it, with like NAT sound and music and things like that.
And this is not to be confused, because the thing is if you've ever, like, depending on the type of video you make, music can be your primary audio, right? A natural sound can be your primary audio. It's whatever you want the viewer to focus on, versus the secondary audio, which supports that. So, like, if we're talking about Jeff's show, this will always stick out to me. He did a segment on the light rail station, right? And if you are having your politician talk about the light rail station, you want to show B-roll, right, with the sound of the light rail station, and all that entails. Trains passing by, doors closing, people walking off onto the platform, just conversation in the background. All of that is secondary audio, and that primary audio would be the interview. So that's kind of how that relationship can work when you're putting it all together.
So there are some types of audio out there. There's obviously interviews. That's would be a primary audio source. Sound effects, NAT Sounds, which in a sense could sort of go along with like sound effects, but they're ones that you record yourself in the field. Like he was saying, like sounds of like traffic, things like that, and music. You want to take these?
Yeah, sure. So interviews, it's most often considered your primary sound. All of you have seen that shot of, and actually, can I get a volunteer really quick? Anybody? It's all good. Don't worry, I won't bite you. It's fine. Come on, Eric, you can do it, man.
Yeah.
Here, just take a seat right here. And we're just gonna, actually, here, grab this camera real fast. So, you all know the setup. Eric, if you don't mind just taking a seat. You'll have your subject sitting there, and you frame them, right? And this will become your primary sound. Sometimes you'll have them break the fourth wall and look at the camera and talk. Like, if it's a retirement video, or, if Eric graduates from high school, big if, just kidding, you will, I hope. I'm just kidding, that was meant to be a burn, yikes. But, if people are saying, Eric, you've been so great on our soccer team. It was awesome when you made that goal. Looking forward to seeing where you go in life. So you'd have that person probably address the camera directly.
Right.
But if it's like an informational thing, like the news style shot, you'd have them look off to the side, and then they become an expert, right? So anyway, that's one way to do it. The thing that I think a lot of folks don't know about interviews in general is, and Eric, maybe you can help me out on this. So if I asked you, how do you feel about soccer, what would you say?
Say if you enjoy it or if you don't enjoy it. And if I said it, I would say I enjoy it.
Right. Right. It's tied to his opinions and emotions about something. Those are always the most powerful sound bites. That's why when you watch a really good story, they usually start off with someone talking about how they feel about something, or they present that part of it, because that's what we connect with. And then you'll go to some expert. So if I were to ask Eric about, tell me about dribbling the ball. How do I dribble a ball? That's more factual, right? And then we would show that sort of stuff. Anyway, thanks, Eric. You can head on back. I just wanted to kind of show that. Just demo really quick. Okay. Take the next one, Ben.
All right. So NAT Sounds. So again, this is any audio that's not created digitally and is recorded from a source out in the environment. So, let's say you're doing, well, this example comes up later, I'm going to steal it right now. Let's say you're doing an interview about a new bowling alley that just opened up. You're interviewing the owner and stuff like that. You want to get some of those NAT sounds of people bowling and to lay in between, when there's a little bit of a break in what the person is saying or whatever, and you get this crash of the pins and things like that. So it's often used as both primary and passive audio. And again, it's sounds that occur out in the environment. Anybody else? Can you think of some examples of NAT sound that you've seen in videos?
Or that you've used in a recent video? They happen a lot more than you'd think. And it could be even something as simple as like the drip of water
Car
from a
racing.
faucet. Yeah, it could be the screech of a tires.
Yeah, cars.
It could
I
be
love cars.
just, and actually in Teen Video Boot Camp, what one of the group I was leading, to simulate the sound of an audience booing, I had them record themselves booing in a bunch of different ways, and then I mixed it in the editing process and overlay it, so it sounds like a whole crowd of people booing at the same time, right? And so that's a way you can almost, it's natural, but it's a way to use that then in post, right? I didn't create it on a computer. I had some people actually do it, and I collected it from them.
Yep.
But
And like you saying, it was something he collected. You can buy those types of sound effects, which we'll talk about sound effects too, but those, you got to pay for those. You can just do a lot of them yourself.
One use of NAT sound that I've found very useful is just birds chirping or things like that. Because occasionally you have a beautiful scene
Yes.
and a passenger jet flies overhead. And the point isn't the passenger jet. The point is the wonderful scene and what it sounds like when the jet is not around. And so it's always useful to record bird sounds or maybe a cow mooing or a pheasant or that's NAT sound that's really, really helpful.
well,
There's a music production house in town that whenever they do a background for a commercial and that type of thing, they try and sneak in a crow sound. That's their signature.
no, okay.
So you can always tell, or I can tell,
Yeah.
by listening to a commercial if that was done at what place.
Yeah.
They all have, a lot of them have their
Nice
little
to sneak it in.
signature
Little signatures.
That's
yeah.
funny.
icons and that type.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you record, a lot of those sounds that work for a variety of different situations, like Jeff was saying, like bird sounds and like nature sounds, you can create your own library of sound effects that you made, and you can use them on multiple different projects.
Well, that's a great idea too, because that'll save you time in the future.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And just store those sounds in a file, and then you have them when you need them.
Yeah.
Well, even when you're out in the field shooting video, I think that, a lot of folks, when they first start off, they're so focused on the framing of the shot that they don't pay attention, and the awareness of everything else going around them kind of disappears because they get so focused. But it's really important to notice what's around you, because I'll give you, for instance, like if we were to talk about Race for the Cure, or some type of event where there's a race. Give me some examples of natural sound that you guys hear already in your head. Just throw it out. Feel free.
Sound of runners.
Runners. What else happens at a race? Crowd. What happens at the start of a race? Eric got it. Gunshot. There's always the psh, usually a horn. Everybody's like, yeah, let's do this. Woo! Right? And then at the end, you have all these people lining up, cheering, clapping, yelling for. Those are all NAT sounds, right? You didn't have to create it on a computer or make it up. That's all stuff you just pull from an environment you're in. So having that awareness is really important, at least while you're shooting. Anyway, just a little thing.
Yep. And a lot of times the NAT sound comes from your B-roll that you're shooting, and you actually like use it over the same shot. Like if you got like people cheering in the crowd, you want to use that actual shot. But then there's the other natural sounds, like I was saying, that can work for multiple different things, like just like nature sounds and stuff. But yeah, those NAT sounds at an actual event, you know, you want to put it in the story where it makes sense along with your B-roll. So sound effects. Basically the flip side of natural sounds is they're artificially created, and they would then be used to like replace natural sound. So I mean, I don't know if all sound effects are always artificially created, but I mean it depends. There's definitely some that are made on a computer, but
you and I talked about this before. So Jurassic Park, we don't know what a dinosaur sounds like.
No,
So
we
I mean, maybe some of us do. Not age jokes. All right. Anyway, but you know, as far as how they created that, they took a bunch of different natural sounds, but then mixed them together to create the sound of what they thought a T-Rex sounds like, a Velociraptor, all that sort of stuff. If you do a little digging, it's not safe for this presentation, but you'll find out what they use to actually make those sounds. But that's a sound effect. I mean, they mixed it together to create what they thought something else sounded like.
Yeah. And
More futuristic would be something like space.
right.
Yeah,
so that's what I was going to
absolutely.
say is like space type of sounds or like
Yeah.
robotic type of sounds. Those are all created artificially, digitally on computers.
Yeah.
There's also sound effects artists that specialize. I mean, there's Hollywood sound effects artists that specialize in making sound effects that sound like something, but they do it a different way. Like maybe they want sound effects of like somebody walking, and they'll just take like a couple pieces of wood and like go like this or something, you know, and or they'll for like thunder, you take like a sheet of metal and go like this, and it makes like a thunder sound effect and stuff like that. So those are, you know, artificially created.
Do you know
in
what a
a sense.
lightsaber sound effect comes from?
Yes.
What is it, Brent? I'm
You
so
go up to
curious.
a telephone pole, one of those wires that come down from it.
Yeah.
You hit it with a big wrench.
Oh,
And you listen,
cool.
you get that wow,
Yeah.
wow type thing, and that's all it is.
That's so cool. Fun fact.
Or
Brent, that's awesome.
or lightsaber. That's feedback between like a radio and a telephone.
Oh.
You get that wah, wah,
Yeah.
something like that.
I wonder about the one when they first turn it on. It goes.
Well, that's what I mean.
Sorry,
You
that
know,
probably just blew out
That's
the audio.
a guy going.
Yeah, that's Ben and I, right?
Yeah.
There are
Making
some
up
people can
sounds.
do that.
Anyway.
Sorry, it just reminded me of a video, one of the lip dub videos, or bad lip reading
Bad
videos.
lip
It's a YouTube channel. It's hilarious, and they do some Star Wars ones. And when they're doing the lightsaber fighting, it's just like sounds like wooden sticks. So it's just like click, click. It's just like otherwise it's completely silent, and you just hear the clicks. It's hilarious.
Wow.
Should watch that if we got time later. So music, everybody knows what music is, right? So music is going to be the one thing that really conveys the video's tone and the emotion in it and things like that, and the pacing is a big thing. So, you know, if you have a high energy thing, Ari was just editing his video from the Pride Parade yesterday, and he was picking out some music from our music library that was upbeat and very exciting and stuff, and he was doing this fast-paced cuts to the pacing of the music. So, who wants to hum the theme to
Well,
start?
I put that down there because this is just this shows you the importance of sound, right? Almost everybody who knows pop culture could hum it. What's the opening song to Star Wars? Oh, come on, don't be shy. I hear some people doing it, yeah. Or Jaws. Right? Harry Potter, there's a stretch. Anybody? Yeah, I did better than nerd. I love it. Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's totally it though. But that tells you, no, I'm a nerd too. I knew it. That's why I put it there. But that's why music matters, is because it can set the tone for how a whole audience sees what you're making. And that's what's so crazy about it, is that a lot of people are just like, well, I'll find something on YouTube, or I'll find this and just throw some random song in. No, the song creates a character all in and of itself. So then when you're editing to that character, it creates a different tone. like a totally different energy. And so I guess the easiest way to like see that in action is shoot something, anything, and then choose different types of songs and put it together in the way with those same clips. Totally different feel.
Yeah, it is.
Totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean,
That's why you have a
It's
lot of
very
repeat
obvious.
themes in movies like Star Wars, for
Yeah.
instance. You know, whenever you see Darth Vader or any of the Empire, really, you get that Empire theme
yeah,
and stuff. So,
yeah. yeah.
all right. So this is kind of relating to prepping to go out into the field and shoot an interview. So beforehand, when you're thinking about your video and things like that, you want to have an idea of what your final video is going to look like, and you work backwards from there. So what that is referring to is, again, going back to like the bowling alley, or like the example here, like if you're doing an interview with someone who got a track scholarship, go to their high school track and shoot it on the track. But you want to think about those sounds the whole time. Think about them ahead of time before you go out there. Maybe even go scout the location. Choose a time to go there. If you go to this person's high school track and there's a track meet going on, that might be too loud to do your interview. Maybe schedule your interview when you know there's just going to be either nobody there or people just practicing. You got a couple people running on the track behind them or something like that. But then you work backwards from what you want your final video to look like, and you decide where you're going to shoot it and what kind of sounds and stuff you want to get out there. This helps for both video and audio. It helps for background noises and being able to get like NAT sounds at the shoot and stuff like that. Anything to add?
Nope.
Cool. All right, so gear. Just a couple things to think about. Are you shooting outdoors? Bring a windscreen for your microphones, or some rain or snow gear in case there's bad weather, things like that. If you're shooting indoors, consider bringing a moving blanket. They work really well for dampening sound. You can put them, if you have a way to like hang them on the wall, or if you got like a stand you can hang them on to like maybe drape in front of a door if there's people out in the hallway chatting or something, to block out that noise. They work really good to throw on the floor if you have a nervous person that you're interviewing and they're like tapping their feet. Throw a blanket under their foot to dampen that sound. You can get them for pretty cheap at Menards or whatever. There's of course blankets out there that you can buy from video production companies that are going to charge like 4 times as much or whatever, and it's basically the same
For a
thing.
blanket.
For a blanket, yeah.
They want that money.
But it's a super special blanket.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
And of course, always remember your batteries, your microphones, your XLR cables, which if people aren't familiar with what those are, they are basically extension cables for audio.
I'm going to be your Vanna White really quick.
there's one
This
right
is an
there.
XLR cable.
Yeah.
Three prongs.
Yep.
Although I'm not technically educated enough, Brent, do you know, or does anybody else know what each of these represent?
Yeah,
Inside?
one's a ground, I know that.
Okay.
One's a hot, one's
Yeah.
two of them are ground.
Two of them
Gotcha.
are ground?
Yeah, 2 of them are ground.
And one's a
There's
hot.
one
And
that's
one's
a-
hot?
That's a solid ground, and the other one's positive and a negative.
Positive
Cool.
negative.
So
Yeah.
they're not genders,
Because
because some of them say it's a female.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
well,
you got
the,
the female
ends are
male
different.
ends.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
so
the male's got the sticky out points.
I'm learning.
and the
Yeah.
female's got-
Yeah.
So those cables can also send power through them. So
Mhm.
that's why they've got like the ground and the positive and negative, because they send power along with an audio signal. So depending on what type of microphone you're using. So and then obviously headphones. Headphones are super important, because even if you're out there and you're watching your levels on your meter and everything, and the levels look good and it seems like you're recording a good volume, there may be some type of background noise that you're not noticing, or there might be like an interference if they're using a wireless mic. Sometimes wireless mics pick up all sorts of radio signals and things like that, and might start making weird noises and stuff. So headphones, super important.
And they don't have to be like the high budget ones.
No.
Honestly, like for what I use for freelance, I use those headphones they include in Apple stuff, and it came with it already. You just keep a bunch of those. They're cheap. The whole point is that you can hear and that it's not over modulated, as in it's not like or any buzzing or anything like that. But as long as you can hear, you should be good to go.
Yeah. When I was first getting into video production stuff, I thought I needed all this like fancy gear, which isn't super fancy because I didn't have too much money. But headphones especially, I spent a good chunk of money on the headphones that I own, and they're the big over-the-ear ones.
Yeah,
they look
I
really
have some.
cool and they sound great and everything. I hardly ever use them,
Yeah.
to be honest. I was like, oh, I could use these when I travel and stuff too, but I'm like, man, this takes up so much space in my bag. And I end up just bringing earbuds with me when I travel now and stuff. So
Remember the
Well,
antenna?
and but I also want to not say that headphones aren't necessary. I'm just saying, as a field producer, in the field, you just need to know that it's there and that the levels sound okay. But in your studio, like at home, if you ever, sit down in front of a computer, it's good to have all this, the best headphones you can get, because you're not going to risk damaging them or anything like that. So
Some of them have
that's the
mics
flip
on 'em.
side.
Yeah.
Some of them have
I
mics
have
on
a
them
mic
too.
on mine.
yeah, the more expensive headphones are probably better for editing.
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
So what's the difference between having a handheld one
Yeah.
and the one with the wireless? Which one is recommended and when?
Well, we can talk about that in a little bit. We got some of that.
We're
We
gonna
got some of
jump-
that coming up.
Okay.
So if I don't completely answer your question in a little while, bring it up again. So some tools to consider bringing out in the field. I thought this was a really great tip from John Hansen. He said, get some surgical tape. You can get some at like Walgreens, a roll of it for $3 that'll last you a couple of months at least. It's very similar to gaff tape. If you're familiar with gaff tape, it's a video production type of tape that doesn't leave any kind of residue and it comes off really easily. The thing is, since it was created by video production people, they charge an arm and a leg for it, a ridiculous amount for this tape. But the surgical tape is essentially the same thing and much cheaper. Any type of mic holders, like boom mic holders or
So-
stands like we've got right over there,
Yeah.
There's
things like that.
boom mics there. Well, here's a
Yeah.
stand. Can kind of show off that. So, let's see. All right. And then you would, obviously, I don't know how many of you have done this at, schools or anything like that. It's a simple enough stand. They're really portable, really easy to move, and
Yep.
kind of,
Leave that up for a sec.
Sure.
The next tip is sandbags. Sandbags, we've got a few here that I'd be willing to let you guys check out, but oh my gosh, they've embedded themselves into these lights. Okay. So, you can get cheaper sandbags than these. These are actually like video production sandbags. You can get cheaper ones at home improvement stores and stuff. But these particular stands here, since they're so lightweight and they don't get like super tall, you don't really need sandbags for them.
Right.
There's other stands out there called like C stands, which can get super tall and they can stretch out really far. They're at more of a risk of tipping over. So you just grab a sandbag or two, you throw it on the legs, and then you don't have to worry about that falling over.
pins it down.
We keep them in here for the lights that we've got in the studio because those are pretty top heavy. But I'd be willing to let people check them out if they think they need them. I should get some C stands actually. Those would be nice to have.
That'd be awesome.
So again, XLR cables, super important.
Yeah.
There's some microphones, like we're on wireless ones right now, so we don't need those XLR cables. Even with a wired lavalier, you've got a pretty long cable on it, so you may or may not need that extension, but it's always good to have at least a couple of them with you just in case. And then an external recorder for backup recording.
So, like this is an example of one. This is which one do you have
That
here?
is the
It's a
Zoom
Zoom
H4n.
H4n Pro. So basically, and you can see it, an XLR cable is going to connect down here, and then you would choose how to pull it into here. It'll record on an SD card. I'll be on the side right there. I'm sure Ben has one.
Not here. Right
Not here, not right now. But it also has mics on top. So if you're in a hurry and just need something, like, boom. So I'll give you, for instance, on how I've used one of these before. Weddings, right? Or I'll just give you an example. If there's no audio person there that you can pull a feed from into this directly, what I've done before is I've set this and then had someone go up, test the sound, put it by like their main speaker to record the audio. It's not ideal. It's not going to be your best audio, obviously. But in a pinch, it'll work.
It's a good backup.
as a
It's a good
backup.
backup.
It's a very big backup, but that's the point. It's a backup piece of equipment in that way.
Yeah.
So-
So our cameras that we have here for you to check out, there's 2 inputs on them, so you can run 2 microphones into them. You could do 2 wireless mics if you want. Even if you're interviewing one person, you could put one mic on top of the other one, and you have one as a backup in case the other one fails. Or you can do a wireless mic like this, and then a shotgun mic. With like one of those stands or like those C stands, you just set it up above them, pointing at your subject as a backup. Not all cameras have 2 inputs like that. Like our DSLR, our photo camera, that can also shoot video, but it only has 1 microphone input. That's where that backup comes in handy. Again, like Dietrich was saying, just using the recorder itself with the little mics on top as a backup, you can set it, if you're shooting from like the waist up, you could set it on a short table next to them, or set it on the floor kind of pointing up in their direction or something like that as a backup. It's always good to have that backup in case something, for whatever reason, happens with your primary audio, then you've got that instead of losing your entire interview. But again, if you're wearing headphones, you should hopefully realize that your primary audio, something went wrong with it. But yeah. All right. So arriving on location, I would recommend scouting a location ahead of time. But if you're not able to do that, locate a suitable spot for your interview. You want to find a spot that's free from as much distracting noises as possible, like traffic, people, air conditioning, things like that, unless that's part of your story. If those people are supposed to be in the background and it's part of your story, then that's great. Develop an ego. Your video is the most important thing, so don't worry about some security guard giving you a hard time because you're interviewing in a hallway or something like that, or you're blocking people from getting through. You say, okay, we're gonna do this interview real quick, give us 5 minutes, and if that's the best location for you to do your interview, both for video as far as the background as well as audio, just do it. Do what you need to do to get your video to look and sound as best as possible.
Anything questionable, you should always get permission ahead of time too.
Yes. Yep, that helps a lot. I mean, you don't need permission for all locations if it's like a public location. If it's like a mall, like who do you contact at the mall to ask if you can shoot there?
It's better at a school or something.
Schools, yeah. So there are
100% schools.
Yeah,
A
100%
particular
schools.
company or
Yeah.
inside,
Yep.
you can't even walk in.
Yeah,
up there
private-
unless you know what you're doing.
Right, yeah. Private businesses, you don't want to just show up and they have no idea that you're coming and stuff like that. Like, that's still private property and stuff. But
But
if it's
your example of the hallway, I mean, if you also have to make sure that the person you're interviewing is comfortable
Yep.
Right.
and not feeling uncomfortable because the security guard is standing out there waiting
Right.
for you, or
Well, I would jump on with Ben's point about getting, and actually Brent's point about getting permission first.
Permission.
Yeah.
The whole idea is if you have security, they're on your side,
That's right.
and making sure that folks are understanding, like, they're just going to be here 5 minutes, don't worry, we'll open it back up, just give them that 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why it's important to reach out, and especially, actually, I was going to go with the mall, reach out, like if you're at Mall of America, go to the security desk and ask them, if you want to be nice and give them that opportunity.
Yeah.
That way, if something does happen, security will be with you and they'll understand what's going on, and they'll actually probably, tell other
Help you.
people back off. Because you don't know what'll happen, especially at big malls these days.
Mall of
My
America
God.
needs permission.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
have to meet,
exactly.
yeah.
Certain
There's
places.
certain places
Yeah.
that do, yeah.
Yeah.
And going back to like developing an ego, I don't mean like don't be like a jerk about it. That's not what I mean. It's just take charge. It's your shoot.
Right.
So you want it to look as good and sound as good as possible. So that's to you, that's the most important thing. So do what you gotta do.
I'd like to add too, I agree with everything that's been said. One thing, however, is occasionally security people and the people who run the office in charge of keeping shoppers happy will say, well, Channel 5 does their interviews over here, it's really good. Or, oh, no, all the networks like to have that as a background. Well, just it may not work for what you're doing. And so very politely say, you know, we have something better in mind.
Or like, I would really love to shoot it over
Yeah,
here. or
I said,
something.
and always say, that's a good idea, but you know, for what we're doing here, we really want to shoot down this corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, be nice about it, and that's what you mean by ego too.
Right.
Absolutely.
When people start telling you what's best for Channel 9,
Right.
it ain't so good usually for what you want to do.
Well, and a lot of the times with the, I mean, this is kind of going off topic a little bit, but a lot of times with those news agencies, you know, they're arriving on location 20 minutes before they're going live, and they're throwing up their gear really quick. And if the people are like, "Hey, this is a good spot," they're gonna be like, "Okay," you know. And so they're usually much more crunched for time. They don't have time to think about it. But if you do have time to think about it, scout out that best location that works for your shot. Remember that everything makes a sound. Even the most quiet environments. You could shoot in a library, and I guarantee you're going to hear the air conditioning, or you know, there might be some kids in the kids section laughing or something like that. Sound bounces off all surfaces, and it comes from all directions. So keep that in mind. And again, we've talked about this a couple times already. If you need a specific sound, the best way to get it is to be in that location. So you know, bowling alley. Going back to that, shoot your interview in a bowling alley. With that, though, too, you know, keep in mind, going back to like the NAT sound thing, you might want to try to ask the questions or get the interviews like in between bowls or something like that, and then record the sound afterwards and put it in yourself, because you don't want some loud pins crashing right in the middle of a really important sound bite. Yeah.
Also, I'd add, if it's raining out and your interview wants to hold an umbrella, don't do it.
Pat,
Your microphone, it's just, you can't hear anything.
If it's raining out, don't shoot outside, because don't get your gear
Don't
wet.
destroy the gear.
Well, I mean,
Electrocute.
Yeah.
I've
You get
occasionally hidden underneath the roof, and it'll look better if the guy
Yeah.
had the lady had an umbrella. It'll look really nice,
Oh,
but
yeah.
the audio is just unusable.
And there's, you know, if it weren't BCAT's poor equipment, and we don't, you know, it's a publicly shared stuff, they do make raincoats and stuff for different
Thank you.
pieces of gear. So if you have like your own private set of gear, knock yourselves out. Yeah.
I should get some rain gear actually, but
Good.
you can even just use like plastic bags too. I've cut a hole in the bottom of a plastic bag, and I stick it just enough around the lens cover
Right
there,
here.
and
And
just
let
like
it
that,
hang
and then
Yeah.
cover the rest of the camera.
Because most of the time, this mic you're not going to be using for your primary audio. You're going to put a microphone on them, kind of like the one I have on.
Right.
We have on ourselves these
Mics will pick up
lavaliers.
through the bags.
Right. So, and because of the proximity of how this works, you know, their voice will be picked up way more than any, unless, like Jeff said, they're holding their umbrella right here, and they're like, well, let me tell you, pet, 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 right behind you. So that's the downside, but yeah, anyway, cool.
All right, so collecting audio. So we're going to talk about different types of microphones now. We're only going to talk about 4 main types today. There's tons of different types of microphones out there, but we're going to talk about the ones that are probably used the most. Lavalier mics, that's what we're wearing here. They're
Yep.
usually clipped on, and it collects audio from a single source, which is usually the interviewee.
Yeah.
The boundary mics, these collect audio from multiple directions, so it's good for like room audio type of things. Handheld microphones, they collect audio from a single direction, and then they reject the audio from all the other directions, and I'll show you what I mean about that in a little bit. Then shotgun microphones, they collect audio from a single direction at longer distances, so that's why like we are able to set the ones, you can't see it on camera, but we've got the ones set up on the sides to be able to get you guys when you're talking, and we're able to set them back farther so that they're not in the shot.
And these are some just examples of what Ben, so this is a lavalier, right? This is the, you know, clip-on. This would be an example of a shotgun mic, because it's going to point at somebody, and it collects most of its sound right from wherever you're aiming it at, hence shotgun. And then this one's going to be your handheld. We all know what a handheld. They're also known as omni mics, because they pick up any sound in a 360 pattern. So like,
Depends on the mic.
it depends
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
mic though
mics are-
too.
they can
Yeah.
be either way.
If you Ben, do you know why people do that when they're
When they're
when like
singing?
I
yeah,
think
when
it's
they're
to look
singing?
cool, honestly.
I think it is too. I feel like it is, but I also feel like maybe there is something to it. I always thought that it would
Maybe the
open
way
up
the
their
voice
their
projects
voice
out.
carries.
Sometimes
Sorry, I
it does.
should have shaved.
Yeah.
Look at my
I'll
neck.
just-
Oh no, you know, like that.
Well,
But
yeah.
but
So
it's
we'll talk about pickup patterns too in a sec here for these
Yep.
types of mics. That's something that I'm not a pro with, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. But the lavalier microphone, oh wait, that's not a lavalier. That's more of a lavalier like you see today. This is actually, like, when I was looking up lavalier microphones, this came up on Wikipedia. Apparently it was like the first one, and I thought it was kind of a funny picture. So, but there's, we know Benedict Cumberbatch. He's got his little lapel mic on right there. That's another name for it, because that's what that's called on a suit jacket, is the lapel. So that's how it got that nickname. It's just a small microphone used in television and theater and things like that. That, you know, you see it a lot in like the news anchors and stuff wear them, stuff like that.
And when you touch it, it does not pick up that sound.
It
Sometimes
will.
It will.
Yeah,
So
if I
when
tapped
you're
it right
doing
now.
that, is there?
right. So if I started going like this, I'm not going to do it because probably like
Hunter's laughing at us.
Yeah.
He's like, come on.
But the thing is with the lavaliers, you can get windscreens that go on top. So that's how when you're outdoors, it doesn't get all jarbled. Like, if that's a word, garbled. Jarbled.
we
I've totally
understand
made
it.
up a word.
No.
Whatever.
We
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, though. Yeah. So that's kind of also the same reason this part is on here too. This is a windscreen for the mics.
Yep, and we'll
talk a little bit more about.
yeah, talking about, speaking of, well, we'll talk about the pickup pattern first.
Sure.
So when you're looking at this, so most lavaliers are omnidirectional, and what that means is they pick up in 360 pattern. So the way that this pickup pattern works is, imagine the microphone is coming up here, and this is the top of the microphone here. So it's basically picking up like this as well as out like this. I mean, it's like a globe around this microphone. They'll pick up sound regardless of their direction, and they don't need to be lined up directly with the mouth, but the downside of them, so again, the angle of the microphone is not important, but the downside of them is the distance that they can pick up. So it doesn't have to be pointing directly at the mouth, but if I was wearing a suit coat and I had that, are you checking the live video? Oh, I thought you were seeing it. I thought you were checking my live stream, seeing if it's working. No, I'm just kidding. So if I was wearing a suit coat and I had the mic picked or put on this side of my suit coat, and I'm primarily talking to someone in an interview like this, or maybe I'm in the middle or something like that, and then I turn to talk to somebody over here, it's not going to pick that up as well because. Again, even though it doesn't need to be pointed directly at the mouth, when I turn my head this way, I'm getting farther away from the mic. I'm physically moving farther away. So that distance is a factor. So
Well, and that's like Ben was saying, if you're interviewing somebody and you mic it over here and they turn their head this way, guess what? That audio not going to sound great.
no.
Or if they turn their head this way, it's going to get really loud really fast. So ideally, you're going to have it somewhere right below them,
Yeah,
so that no matter what direction they're talking, you should be able to hear
get a
just-
pretty
yeah,
decent
pretty
yeah,
good signal.
pickup. I tried to figure out what exactly, I don't know if you know the answer to this. I don't know what these dBs mean. It has something to do with the distance away, but I don't know why it's getting louder.
I think what it's
Farther away?
okay. And no, I'm not even gonna
Brent
say it.
might
But
know
Brent,
better,
do
too.
you know? What I thought when I saw this graph is that it reduces the sound that is being picked up in the middle by -25 because that's like where
it's
the primary
closer.
source. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna be. And then as you go away, it reduces it a little bit less and less. But I don't know. That's a
Yeah.
great question. If
I
anybody
was
can tell
confused. I was
us.
trying to find a good answer to what those dBs
You
mean.
look on the
Well,
internet?
usually, the patterns I've seen, the microphone is always pointed at the zero at the top. And then the pattern is around from that, so as you go further away, that's when it gets less dBs.
That's what I
Yeah,
was
all the
thinking.
ones I found were
Logically.
like this. It's weird, and I've got another one coming up
Okay,
to kind of look at it more. But yeah, I couldn't find a clear answer to why it's.
Yeah.
why it
The-
was rated that way,
Yeah,
Facebook, let us know.
it's kind of hard to see for you guys, I think, but this is actually going down. So it's going
Yeah.
from 0 to -25,
Right.
not positive 25.
Yeah.
So it's getting quieter So the mic, yeah, I guess the
Yeah,
mic
I think the closer it is to the middle of the mic, the more it
like kind of
depresses it or-
attenuates down
Yeah.
to a lower level.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is that like a PZM, that one?
Well, on Final Cut, the bigger the minus or the negative, it's higher. It's almost overbearing. So
Right. Well, I don't know how Final Cut is, but like Premiere,
Like
your
0.
audio starts out at 0, and then
0
you
is
can
the
go up
natural.
to positive
Exactly.
6 to make it louder. Or you can go down to negative, basically negative infinity to mute it. Yeah. So I forget what did you just say?
I call it a PZM.
PZM. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what this is.
Pressure
So-
zone mic.
Yeah, so boundary mics, they are a small omnidirectional mic that is meant to be put on a surface or a boundary. And they're good for, so like you've probably seen them in like offices before, conference rooms. So that would be the boundary mic right there. And when you're doing a conference call with somebody and you've got a bunch of other people in the room with you, you just need that one mic set on the surface in the center, and it's going to pick up everybody in the room pretty well.
They use them a lot on stages too.
Yep, yeah, so they're good instrument mics, piano mics. They pick up pianos really well because you can, especially like grand pianos, if you got that hood open, you can attach it to the bottom of the hood and it's going to pick up the sound from the piano really well. Or like in the examples here, you put it on the board at a hockey arena, and when someone gets checked into the side of the board, it's going to pick up that sound really well. You can also to pick up just room noise, which we'll talk about why it's good to record room noise, but they're good for that too. You can just plant it on like a wall or a table or something like that and pick up some room noise with them. So handheld microphones. They're the most common unidirectional microphone.
This guy.
It's a cardioid or handheld microphone. So it gets the name cardioid from that heart-shaped pickup pattern. So before with the lavalier microphone, it had this 360 pattern, so it would pick up sound even underneath the microphone. But the handhelds are going to pick up in like a heart shape like that, or upside
This
down.
one, oh,
heart shape.
maybe this one. Yeah, okay. This one is a cardioid.
Yeah, so
Versus,
that was
yeah, because they have omnidirectional ones, so that's why. Never mind.
yeah.
Go on.
Well, those are actually hypercardioid mics, which basically they get a tiny little bit that kind of picks up from the back. But what it does when it actually picks up a little bit from the back is it actually allows this pattern to project out more, so it's actually easier to pick up from the top of the microphone. This is, like I was saying, this is the type of graph that I was finding out there. Is usually the mic is in the center, and then it's got these dBs that go.
And some
Higher,
have
farther.
that foam covering and then others don't.
You can take that off.
Yeah,
And
this
what's
is
the
a
difference? What does that
windscreen.
cover?
That's a windscreen. So
Yeah.
when you're doing an interview or something outside on like a windy day, it's going to cut that sound.
Right.
that the
It'll
mic picks
deflect
up.
the wind so it doesn't hit the.
Right.
Some vocalists use those. I don't know why. Besides
Well, yeah. If you watch an outdoor concert, Lisa, you
Or
know,
even indoor if
or
they're,
indoor,
if they're
yeah.
breathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're
That's
breathy.
why.
Yeah.
Some vocalists are just too
Yeah.
blowing into the mic,
Yeah.
and they don't have the control.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So these microphones will reject audio coming from other directions. So that's why they're used a lot for vocal mics, because you're going to basically just get the audio from your source right there.
But they're also very sensitive. So if you
They are.
hold it, because when people are talking into it,
Mhm.
Well, that's
and
why.
they're a little bit off.
Right. They go, if you start pointing it in directions, because people talk with their hands, and you'll
Yes.
notice this with
Yep,
politicians where they go, and yeah, let me tell you about blah, 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 blah. And you're like,
You know, that graphic thing must be because of the distance from, say your audio source is right up there at the top where the
Right.
0 is.
Yeah.
That's 5 dB less there and all, it depends on how far you are from the audio source.
Right.
That's probably what that means.
Yeah. Okay. So shotgun microphones, like we got there. So the pickup pattern with this is kind of interesting. Actually, let me get this one out.
oh,
They pick up from behind too.
They'll pick up slightly from behind. So it's gonna. So basically, the microphone is gonna be like this, and it's interesting because these slots seem like they would pick up noise, but what these are actually designed for is to deflect noise. These grooves in here, and so that the source is primarily coming in from this direction. So these are a directional microphone, so you're going to pick up the best audio pointing at your subject. They're going to pick up a tiny bit from the sides and a little bit from the back. But again, this pickup pattern in the back is slightly large because the way that these mics are designed is it actually helps then project out the distance that it can pick up more than other types of microphones. So that's why that pattern is
And what
like
distances are we talking about?
Depends on the shotgun.
Yeah.
The ones that we've got here, they're not super high-end shotgun microphones, but they're pretty nice. But with like you guys right now, we had to kind of crank up the levels for those a little bit to be able to hear what you're saying. And when you do that, you do get some more of the room noise, like the noise from the lights and things like that. Professional shotgun microphones on like Hollywood sets and stuff, they cost like thousands of dollars, and you can be pretty far away, and it's gonna just pick up just that like one source that you're pointing at for the most part.
Does everyone know what we're talking about when we talk about levels? Do you know what that refers to? Okay, so levels, if you look on I don't know if this camera has a battery in it.
Yep.
Does.
Good.
Cool. All right, here, I'm going to spin this guy around so you guys can
We can plug that in.
hopefully, oh yeah, even better. Here. So then we can kind of see,
Oh,
hey, all right.
it unmuted itself when I did that.
That's okay.
I don't know if it's gonna show.
Hopefully it shows up here.
Should be able to turn on the. Hang on, give me a sec. T-Drake, what are you doing to me?
Sorry.
Just kidding.
I just think it's easier to visualize what we're talking about if you know what levels are. Levels are referring to this spot. Ooh.
I'm just gonna unplug this.
Yeah, that's no problem. So these are the levels. When you see that bounce, right? That's what we're referring to as levels. You don't want to hit 0. 0 is like, whoa! No. So ideally, you're gonna land somewhere like right around this range.
Testing,
Right around
testing.
this. Yep,
Check 1, 2,
exactly.
1, 2, 3.
So you can see how it bounces when it gets to that point, and that's ideally where you want to be. So what I like to do is, before you interview somebody, ask them like what they had for breakfast, and be enthusiastic about it, because you want to see what the range of their voice is going to be. If they get excited during your interview and they get up to 0 and it gets overmodulated, you're going to be like, no!
Yeah.
So that's why you want to give them some wiggle room too. So ideally 10 to 20 is kind of the range you want that bounce to get up to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can always boost it in post if it's too
Right.
low. When you do that, though, it's going to boost all of the sound that it's picking up, including the room noise. So you're going to get more of the room noise in there.
Keep talking.
So I don't know what to talk about. That was my point.
Just
Testing,
make points.
testing.
Okay, see, so,
Yeah.
so you can see though,
moving.
right, if I talk, it's low, right, because I'm on the side of it, but if Ben,
Testing. Check 1, 2.
okay.
1, 2. 1, 2, 3.
again, not the
Testing.
highest quality shotgun mic,
No.
but again, it'll sound louder if the person's in front of that,
Closer.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, we could plug any mic
Yeah.
and you could run that same test.
Yeah, this shotgun mic, these little ones that come with our cameras, they're about a third of the size of the bigger ones, so their distance that they can pick up is not going to be as good, and the quality of the audio is not going to be as good. But
And then just so we're talking about channel 1, channel 2. When we're referring to channel 1, channel 2, you're creating stereo sound, right? So it may be the same. So you see how they're the same right now? I'm talking and both of them are bouncing at the exact same level. That's because it's creating a stereo sound, right? But if
Actually,
we,
it's a mono sound, isn't it?
it's mono, but it's 2 of them together,
Yes.
which creates the stereo,
sound.
left and
It's a
right
mono
channel,
together.
right? But if we switch it over and we use another mic,
where'd that lavalier go? Oh, there it is.
yeah, I'm gonna do a lavalier test here. And here, I just changed up, so now, where'd you go, little buddy?
One level here.
We have one level because he shut off the
Shut off the
he
other
shut
one.
off the input 2. Well, he didn't shut
Right.
it off.
I
he
set it
set channel 2 to pick up from input 2, and he didn't currently have anything in there. So it
Test,
wasn't
test,
picking
test,
up-
test, 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 test,
Hey,
test,
move the
test,
bottom.
test. You see channel 2 right there?
I do.
That bounce is, so when you're recording an interview, right, what I would recommend is you record two mono channels, one as a backup off of the shotgun, and then one as your primary. Because you can always duplicate that second channel in post-production, but this will be your backup in case that other one disappears for some reason. Who knows?
Going back to that, always having a backup.
Always having a backup, yeah, that's
backup
it.
recorder.
So anyway, I hope that kind of gives you guys an idea of how that relationship works. And then just to show you again, if we change, I don't know if you guys can see this, but channel 1, channel 2, it says input 1, input 2. All I'm doing is switching this channel 2 one up to input 1. And now you should see the same bounce, because what it's doing now is it's picking up from here only, right? So if So again, that confuses a lot of folks when you start plugging things in and don't understand how that works, but hopefully this helps.
And that's something that I try to explain in my camera class. I don't know if we went into too much detail about that in the camps, but
No, we did. We should have.
we
Sorry,
probably
Eric.
should've,
We
but,
failed you at that point.
I still don't understand. I have the
it's
I
something
have the
that
same issue with my camera, and
Yeah.
I don't.
yeah.
I
it's-
got it to work on one input, and
Well-
I don't want to change it to the other one because it just confuses everything.
And it's hard because all of these settings here are different for different cameras, different brands and stuff. I
Yes.
mean, they're all very similar, but they all look different, and some of them had different functions and stuff like that. So it's hard to really like explain it well. But the main thing to keep in mind when you have this type of audio source where you can plug in two different sources of audio, the main thing to keep in mind is you have two channels and you have two inputs that don't necessarily coincide with each other. So your channel 1 is always going to be your left channel. When you have headphones on, you're going to hear channel 1 on the left, channel 2 on the right, and then you have the two inputs that are separate. So like Dietrich was saying, input 1 on this particular camera can do stereo for you. If you set it that way, you can get a stereo feed from it. Input 2 can only record onto the right channel if you switch that down into input 2. And that's how you're able to get those two different sources of audio. I know that
Is that how yours works?
it's tough to
Well,
explain it. And
I was going to say, just for, if again, going with BCAT's cameras, that's kind of the key to know, is that the relationship between this right here, so,
Yeah.
right? So this is our shotgun, and you see it says input 1 right there, right? So we're all on that page. Lavalier, it's in input 2. Okay, so then when I swing it around, you can see input 1. The two switches are set to input 1, meaning we're pulling from here, right? But if we switch it down to input 2, you should suddenly, you should get that separate bounce that's right there, right? So that's how you can tell, though, where audio is coming from. Yeah, anyway, headphones always help, too, because if you're like, mic check, and you don't hear anything, or it's soft or quiet, then
if it
good thing to
continues to
remember.
be confusing for you, get an external recorder and record one of your sources on stereo in here and record the other one on stereo in here.
That's right, yeah.
As your backup.
Add a wrinkle in there, yeah, that's right.
Paid a lot of money to not to do that.
Those aren't too expensive. You can get that one we got there was, I think, about maybe like 140, and that's a probably middle of the road for as far as these handheld portable audio recorders go. It's kind of a middle of the road price. You can find some for $70-80.
Well,
Yeah.
compound the problem that also the camera I'm using, it has an internal microphone. So you have three
Yep.
options
Yep.
and two
Don't ever
inputs.
set it to internal.
Yeah.
If you have a shotgun or something like that, like this, like our cameras here, this shotgun mic, again, not great quality, but it's going to be way better than these internal mics right here. These internal mics are junk. Try to avoid using them as much as you can, because they're
Well,
really
you
not.
need to know how to eliminate them
How you turn it
in the
off.
mix of all this.
Yeah. Just don't ever put the switches onto INT, which is for the internal mics. Just don't ever put them on INT.
Yeah.
So if it's on INT,
Yep.
take it off.
Yeah, pretty much.
Are you writing this down?
I'm just giving Ahmed
No,
a hard.
you-
I'm
Yeah,
just
I'm
giving
just
Ahmed
giving
a hard
Ahmed a hard
time.
time.
Remember
Understand
the
what I'm
main
writing.
things.
Anyway, does anybody have any like questions up to this point? Or-
You're answering almost everything
yeah,
we come
is
up
there
with.
anything else though that we kind of have gone
Look at that.
past?
Loop going on. It's
Loop,
creepy.
loop.
All right. Well, we'll keep moving on with the
Heck yeah.
presentation then. Okay, so again, like I was talking about before, the thin slots that run down the side of the shotgun microphone actually work as a cancellation, a sound cancellation mechanism, I guess. And then that allows the sound to come directly down the barrel from the front. Microphone placement. Okay. So, like we're doing here with our microphones here, we're roughly a fist length away, you know, right about like chest level. You want to be with lavaliers anyway. It's a good spot to be for your lavalier microphones. If you have it too high, you're gonna get, especially if they're like turning their head and you have it on this side, you're gonna get this muddied sound because it's like bearing into their voice box, right?
Right.
If you have it too low, again, that pickup pattern's not gonna pick them up as well because it's too far away. So right about at a fist length is where you want to be.
Watch
Um,
out. So if you have any subjects though, or interviews with jewelry on, be very careful because
Yeah.
jewelry is like the mortal enemy of lavalier mics
Yeah.
because you'll get this, you know, and it's just awful.
Or
And
scarves.
and then yeah, scarves. Oh, scarves. Basically, any neckwear that isn't a tie is the enemy
Yeah.
of
But those are the ones
lavaliers.
we use.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
So,
what I thought.
not that you want all your subjects to wear, you know, these kind of shirts, but it
Also
helps.
A lot of ladies come with very thin blouses
Yeah.
and sweaters where you can't hang a lavalier on.
Yeah.
You just can't. So it always pays off to tell your guests
to
to
wear
wear
some
certain
different-
things.
Right.
Okay.
And the other route you can take with that is to set up a stand. Like you could bring a stand from BCAT with you, put a shotgun on it and aim it, and then frame your shot so that the microphone isn't in it, but
Yeah.
then go on with that.
Yeah, so we'll touch on that in just a minute on cabling your microphone. So when you're miking up a guest, make sure your guest is comfortable. You know, approach them and say, "Hey, I'm the audio person or I'm the camera person. I'm going to put a microphone on you now. You know, is that okay?" Type of thing. And then get creative with the placement. Hide the microphone inside the shirt if you have to. And I'll show you a picture in a second of a trick that you can kind of do with that. If someone's talking at a podium and they have a mic stand, you know, maybe they got a mic on a stand that's doing like the PA sound in the hall or whatever, but you're not able to tap into that and record that audio, you can tape a lavalier to that microphone or to the microphone stand to pick them up on your recording. And then just anywhere outside of the frame of the camera, get creative with it. You know, so anywhere outside of that is fair game to place a microphone, especially like a shotgun, as long as you don't see it. Again, redundancy. Have multiple sources of audio. Always have a backup, at least one. All right, so always hide the wire. It's just very professional to do that. You know, if you've got a wire dangling down in front of your subject's shirt, it just doesn't look good. It's not professional. It's a bit amateurish, to be honest. So going back to, you know, people with blouses, those definitely, Jeff's right, they're the most difficult thing to mic up. But there are ways that, like, if you can't go up like through their shirt, that's usually the best way. Like here we've got our cables running up through our shirt to hide it. If you're not able to do that,
Can't show you that. Sorry. Private. Privacy, guys.
Dietrich's not comfortable with you guys.
Shame.
No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Maybe you're comfortable, Ben. I'm just kidding.
But like if you're not able, if you got a female that, you know, maybe has like her shirt tucked in or something and she's wearing like a blouse and she's not comfortable running their mic up, you can try like running it over the shoulder, and if they have like a collar on their shirt, you can hide it under the collar and come out around the back. That doesn't help with the fact if they're wearing some kind of loose material down here. But you just, I've done it before where I've just clipped it into that material, and sometimes it works. Sometimes if they move, you get that rustling. But then you can always try something like this if the person's comfortable doing it. So it looks kind of funny, but it's a good trick. So this was from John Hansen. This was actually a thing that he did, a picture that he took. So what he's doing here is obviously it's inside the shirt if a person's wearing an undershirt, and he made a little like triangle of gaff tape or the surgical tape. And taped it first to their shirt. Then he put the microphone on top of that. So that's actually the top of the microphone right there. And then he made another little triangle here and put it on top of the microphone. And that helps keep not only does it help keep the microphone centered, it helps keep their shirt off of the microphone, their overshirt. So I thought that was a really, really cool tip. And then another thing he did is he put a loop in the wire with 2 pieces of tape on each end. And the reason for that is if they are, especially if they're on a hard line microphone, if they're tethered and they like move at all, or if their cable catches for some reason when they're moving and it pulls from down here, that loop's just going to close up as opposed to the mic just pulling off of their shirt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Logical.
Yep.
Pretty cool, I thought.
It's a
Very
cool
creative.
trick.
Cool trick.
Simple and creative.
And then,
I never knew that before.
yeah.
Well, there you go.
So-
See, even
I'm
Jeff can
learning.
learn something.
I
There you
learned an
go.
awful lot.
Yeah.
So as an audio person, if you ever go on a shoot and you are the audio person, that's your job, you want to make sure you're always putting that mic on yourself, except for when they're running it up through clothing. Let them run it up and pull it out, where you want them to pull it out at the top. But then you should mic them up. If they seem super uncomfortable about it, let them try it to clip it on, and then just say, here, let me help you with that, or something like that. It goes back to, making sure that they're comfortable. You don't want to make your subject uncomfortable, but just let them know that, hey, I'm the audio person, I'm here to help you with this. And most of the time, especially people who have done it before, they're going to be like, oh yeah, do your thing. All right, pre-flight checks when you're out in the field. Look there's our H4N Pro. So, like Dietrich was saying earlier, always do a mic check before you start recording. Say, what did you eat for breakfast? Tell me about your first vehicle. That one's always kind of fun because people will sometimes, depending on who it is, they'll get excited about it and be like, I had this 1984 Honda Civic. It barely ran, but I loved it, type
Man,
of
have
thing.
you been stalking me? That was the first car I ever had. It was a 1984.
Really? Oh, wow.
That was a weird choice.
That was a
sir.
weird
I don't
choice.
know,
I
man.
totally just pulled that out of
That's
the air.
really random and creepy.
Meanwhile, in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
How
No.
many other people in this room had a
Yeah,
Honda
right.
Civic
Come on. Yeah, raise your
84?
hand. Be
Raise your
honest.
hand.
Except for Eric. He can't drive yet, but, I'd be amazed if he got one. That would be hilarious.
So, and then if you have a host or an interviewer, just have them casually talk with the person before you start recording to get a mic test. That's probably the best way to do it because they're going to be talking in the voice that they're going to use when they do the interview. And once you've got the audio set, if you're both the audio person and the camera operator, start hitting record before you even start the interview. That's good for a couple different reasons. For one, you might get some good little nuggets that they're just talking, maybe they're kind of casually chatting about what they're going to talk about in the interview, but the person says something really good that you could possibly use later. It also makes the subject more comfortable because if you say, okay, we're going to start now, and then you hit record and they see that light come on the camera, some people, if they haven't done it before, all of a sudden they freeze, right? But if they're already casually talking with the interviewer and you just hit record, they don't even know, and then you just kind of give the thumbs up to your host or whatever, and they just are like, all right, let's get into this type of thing. So, yeah, and then record audio separately if you can. Just gonna keep going back to that. Go for launch, woo woo woo, guys! It's an ambulance. So always listen for the background noises, not the content. So the content, again, is like your primary audio. You already did a microphone check. You know that person's level is good. You know that they sound good. You want to listen for any other background noises. Cars going by, ambulances going by, air conditioning, any type of interference in the microphone. Those are the things that you, as an audio person, need to listen for in the headphones. Another thing, listen for dry mouth. I have dry mouth right now. I always get it when I talk in front of people. Have some water available for your talent. And again, it's you don't have to make a big deal about it. It's making them comfortable. You just say like, hey, I can tell you need a little bit of water, and just hand them a bottle of water or something. And then don't destroy any takes mid-answer. So even if you have some type of distraction that goes by in the background, let them finish their thought. I mean, they might stop themselves if it's like a really loud distraction, but if they just keep going with their answer, you might lose that part of their answer, that small part, but some other part of their answer might be really good. So then after they're done with their answer, then you say, hey, we had a little noise there, could we try that again? So that's a wrap. So again, that room noise. When you're done with the interview, even if your talent is gone, record a little bit of room tone for 10 to 20 seconds. And what that is very helpful for is it will cover up any background noises that might fall in between, like a breath or like in between thought or something like that your talent has. Because what you could do is, if it falls in between that little gap, you could dip the audio down really quick in post, just like mute it really quick, but you'll notice it because you are picking up some background noises like air conditioning, lights, buzzes, things like that. So there's gonna be a noticeable dip in the audio. But if instead you record some room tone and you drop that in there and you fade it together with your interview, you're not gonna notice that. It's just gonna be seamless. Mm-hmm.
Y'all got me thinking of movies.
That's really important. I recommend recording 40 or 50 seconds of room tone, because if you are going to have a narrator, that narrator is going to will sound more realistic and appealing if that same room tone happens, and the narrator is going to be probably in an audio booth recording, and so. And then what you can do in editing too is you can drift out the room tone very gradually underneath the narrator.
And repeat it over and over. You can slow it down as well. Like that's the beauty of having that room noise that you're talking about.
You can record a lot of that, and it may be bird noises on location too, whatever, and that's actually more important. And if a bus goes by and you're interviewing someone and they're saying something important, record the next bus that goes by for tone, because it really sounds bad to just, like you've mentioned here,
dip the audio.
To dip it automatically. You want to dip it gradually. And you need that extra tone.
Y'all teaching me.
Yep. And it can be as simple as just when you take the mic off the person and they exit the room, you just hold it up like this, hit record, and you get it with the same audio source that you did with the interview. That's probably going to be the best way because it's going to match the background noise the best that was in the interview. You can also just use the external recorder and use those mics that are on top and just hold it up.
Sound effects that they usually have.
Right. So yeah.
There is no various locations.
Okay, so do you want to talk about post-production levels? We did a little bit.
We did. Yeah, I think I mean you guys we covered that pretty well. I feel like again keeping that. Hey, I know Chris. Wait. Oh yeah, because I put that in. Derp. Yeah. So anyway, this is a key point he made to me that it just stuck with me. Make sure your narration is higher than the background music. A lot of folks seem to like to throw music in, but if the music is competing with your primary sound, it just doesn't work, right? So anyway, it's really simple to adjust it in post, and if any of you have questions on that, Ben or I could easily help you with that, depending on what editing software you're using. But again, for even in post-production, that 10 to 20 range of yellow is what you want to shoot for throughout your whole thing. If it hits red, then that means you're hitting overmodulation. So you don't want
pops
that.
And things like that in your audio that you can't remove.
Exactly.
So.
Yep.
And going back to like the music too, you know, if you want to have music throughout your entire video, that's totally fine, and you can play with those levels as you go along. So maybe someone's talking for a little bit and you bring the music levels down to a nice level behind them, and then they take a little pause in their thought and you show a clip of what they were just talking about, and you kind of gradually bring up that music for a little bit and show, you know, a few seconds of the clip, and then you bring it back down when they start talking again. And it's kind of makes for
Sure,
nice.
you want me to start learning how to do movies? That's what it sounds
You
like,
can do
'cause
movies.
I would love to do movies.
And again, adjusting the volume levels up or down in post is easy enough to do, but it's best to get it right in the field first, especially with like interview things. Because again, if it's too low and you try to boost it up in post, you're going to be boosting up that room noise, and you're going to get kind of a sort of staticky sound in the background. So mixing audio. So going back to the video's pacing, that's what mixing audio is all about. It has to do with the storytelling portion of the video. So you know, think about how you want to portray that story, both on the video side and the audio side. It's really, we've talked about this multiple times, post-production, that's really where the storytelling comes in. You know, you go out in the field and you gather your sources, your video sources, your audio sources and everything, and then you compile it all. I mean, a lot of times those sources are recorded over weeks, months, you know, and completely different times, and then you just bring it all into post and you start piecing it together and telling your story. And again, any unwanted noises like distracting background noises, pops in the recording, things like that, those can be difficult to remove, sometimes even impossible, especially like the pops if it's overmodulating. They're pretty much impossible to remove. So get it right in the field first. So in conclusion, be over-prepared. It doesn't hurt to be over-prepared. Again, you can go out to the place you want to record at ahead of time and scout it, things like that, and have an idea of what you want your final video to look like. Get help. You know, doing audio is a big job. There's, you know, a lot of the times when, even if it's just like a simple interview, you're going to have the interviewer, you're going to have a camera operator, and you're going to have an audio person. And the audio person, that's all they worry about is the audio, because it's a big deal. But if you have someone there to help you with it, then you've got that redundancy. You've got someone, you know, checking to make sure like your backup is recording and things like that, and making sure you've got everything mic'd up properly and stuff like that. Allow for plenty of time for uncontrollable variables. So, you know, again, those multiple takes. If something happens in the background and it kind of messes up one of your takes, you're going to have to do it again. So just, you know, plan for that. And if you end up finishing early, great, then go grab a drink or something.
I don't drink.
Not Uric, sorry.
Again, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, soda, you know,
Soda.
Go get a
Soda
malt.
pop.
Go get a malt.
Hey, wait, that's unhealthy too.
Yeah.
Water.
Go get
water.
Go get a smoothie.
Yeah, you know, with that part, I was just thinking as Ben was talking about it, one of the things that I like to do when I sit someone down is, aside from the framing, I'll watch that bounce as we're just bantering, because if you pay attention to where the bounce hits when someone gets excited, then you'll know where their top out is, especially on a lavalier, because that'll, like, if I talk really fast and, whoa, check this out, Patty, do you like that, Hunter? Yeah, see, they've already they know my voice fluctuates like that. But if you have someone who's more monotone, then it's actually probably easier.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben.
Yep. No, that's fine. Again, record. What?
He just took a
I burned
verbal
you. I'm
punch
just
at you,
kidding.
and he didn't
I totally
even-
missed it.
I
You're right.
know.
Brandon, thank
You're
you.
right.
I totally missed it. Thank you. The inside
It's a
joke
joke.
is someone said be less monotone in the reviews.
Ah.
Yeah, at our boot camp, and we
Our
both
boot
were
camp.
laughing about that. We were like, well, I don't know. Am I monotone? I don't know. Are you monotone? I don't know. Maybe.
It was me. I know. That's okay. Again, record a backup. Whether that's doing it in the camera if you have two inputs, or doing a separate audio recording. Except that the audio won't be perfect. You know, if you get a little bit of like rustling or something like that from someone's clothing or something like that, you know, a little bit of that is okay. If it's happening constantly throughout the whole interview, you know, they're constantly moving, and you're just hearing the swish, 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 swish the whole time, you might want to stop and say, hang on, we need to do something different with your mic. But if it happens like once, you know, just accept that it's not going to be perfect, and then you're not going to be disappointed. If the interview concludes and you go and throw it into post-production and you listen to the whole thing, you're like, wow, this sounds great. Then you're all excited about it. And then sweeten in post, and that's going back to like the levels and things like that, and removing some of those background noises and stuff. You can do some of that, but you're not going to be able to fix it in post all the time. Like, you can do a lot of fixing in post with video, but you can't always do that with
Yeah, you can't
audio.
remove an airplane going over you as your person's talking. Just doesn't work
One
that
of
way.
The trick to give the talent or an interviewer the idea that you are engaged and involved, and you keep saying, I found that's very annoying, and it's very unnecessary. In the post-production, it's a nightmare.
It drives you nuts, right? Because you hear the other person. But in natural conversation,
Yeah.
right?
But
when
don't
you're talking.
overdo it. I mean,
Yeah.
But that's a trained thing, right?
It's a
So
trained thing,
people
yeah.
train to just say or nothing and just
Yeah.
Well, that-
Yeah, I mean, you want to kind of react a little bit, have some reaction to what they're saying and stuff, and show that you're engaged and listening
Yeah,
and things.
I've
but-
run into that situation many times over the last 20 or 30 years. And in a regular conversation outside of the studio without a camera around, it's a way we show empathy and interest to the interviewer. And it's almost impossible for the person going, to stop that. That's what they've done all their life. And that's how they signal that they're really interested in something.
you're doing it right now. You're doing it right now. Knock that off. Man, this is being recorded.
I just, if I was recording this, 40 edits just to get this done.
If it's
Yeah.
if it's really bothersome to you, like if you have an interviewer and you're the producer, but you're not doing the interview, but you have an interviewer, and it's really bothersome to you as a producer that they keep doing that. Consider having the interviewer off camera and on mic,
Oh, my stomach.
and having just a single shot of the person that you're interviewing. You can still do. Ahmed's like, what?
Talk on audio.
It can still be very compelling. You don't have to show the interviewer on the camera, but they can be there off to the side, still asking the questions, and they can still be doing the nodding. And if they're vocal about it, you're not going to hear it as much because they're far away from the person's microphone. So it's not going to be as annoying in the interview. So that's something to consider.
Well, and this is the other thing too. This is why understanding how this part works is so clutch for all of you, really. If you're doing any audio work, you'll have two XLRs, right? One goes to one input, exactly, he gets it, and one goes to the other input, meaning you can isolate either channel, right? So you'll get the full question because your host or whoever is going to one input, your talent is going to the other, your subject, right? And that's how, most professional level productions go. I mean, if you're in the field and you're just by yourself and you're doing a quick interview with someone, you may stand off to the side and just hand or put the lavalier on your subject and stand back and ask questions. But if you're doing a show like Democratic Visions or something that's in a studio, you'll mic both people up separately and then control that so that you have full control in post-production. So that's how you avoid the because
a lot of people do,
yeah, they do, and it's natural for them to do it.
Yeah.
But again, that's where you gain your control is by saying, no, I'm going to give you your own mic. I'll give you your own mic. I'm going to destroy you while the subject's talking, and then I'll bring you back in for the question.
Right.
And that's where that room tone comes in really
Yep.
handy, because you will notice it even if you've got the two tracks of audio. If you drop the interviewer out while they're doing their you'll hear it. Maybe the average viewer wouldn't notice, depending on what they're watching it on, but you're going to notice it as the video producer, and so just throw that room tone underneath it. And
that's another reason why it's better to have 2 mics instead of
Well,
one.
I would talk with Ben and beg him to have a second lavalier if you're doing that style of interview.
Yeah.
But like if you're just going out to have somebody else talk in general and you don't have a talent or a host, it's unnecessary, right?
Yeah.
So,
But when you got a,
yeah.
The big thing is to have consistent mic things if you're having like, host and that.
Yep.
2 lavaliers, don't use a handheld and a lav.
Yep.
You'll have audio mixes that are really funky.
Good idea.
Absolutely.
What we do on Democratic Visions from time to time is done in post, and it's another way around the aha thing. I tape people listening after we do the interview. They're just listening. And so if I'm getting ahas from one person and too many from the others, I'm not going to get rid of all of them, but I can get rid of some of them. And I have now a cutaway that I've shot after the interview. So I'll just do a butt edit cut, and then I'll paste over that the other person just listening. And that works too.
cool.
Exactly.
Creative.
But
Exactly.
when you do that, you gotta make sure that, as too many news reporters have done, they always nodding silently. And when
You nod too much, yeah.
Don't ever, no, they look like bobblehead dolls.
Wait a minute,
You know,
Charles. So
they
between
don't-
the nod
They don't look like
and the nod.
serious reporters.
Right.
And their camera people ought to be more instructive.
Jeff, how often do you go back and have your host do all the questions again separately?
Occasionally, if it could be done better, if I think it can be done better or more quickly, I will have that done.
Wow.
And our hosts are great, and so they usually go along with
Cool.
that because they want to look good too.
That gives me an idea for future video. I'm more of a behind the scenes person. You know, we record these for your guys' benefit mostly, but I don't particularly enjoy being on camera. So whenever I do interviews, I'm never in it. I'm always behind the camera asking the question, and I have just a single shot of the person I'm interviewing. But the next time I do that, I'm gonna then intercut some shots of just a bobblehead.
Just bobbleheaders like that, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but then-
Another audio technique too, if you're interviewing someone you find absolutely despicable and hate, that's when you bring the jet noise sound effect in, so they can't be heard. Do that only for comedy.
Well, you
This
know.
was very good.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions or just thoughts or a situation that you've run into where you just maybe want some
You
brainstorming?
can smooth out some audio and post on these edit machines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other day, I did a music artist in here with Ben, helped me do a couple things in that. It was too dry. The room was really quiet and that type of thing, so I went in and added reverb to everything, and it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Just to kind of smooth everything out. Take the rough edges off, but
Yeah.
there are some limited choices you can do on the editor.
Yeah, and I do that whenever we've had music acts in here, especially if it's like a solo artist, just like a singer and a guitar. It does sound dry because the walls in here are pretty well soundproofed, and so you're not getting a lot of natural reverb in this room, and that's how studios are generally set up because it's meant more for doing interview type of stuff, and when people are just talking, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, but it does with music. Adding a little bit of reverb in post does make a huge difference. You don't need much, but just...
Yeah, I've recorded a biker bar sounds
Wow.
after midnight, and when I edit his show, I occasionally add that in, and I interest in.
How do you feel? How does that make you feel?
Very bad.
Yeah. Getting bikers in. Anyway.
Very good.
Very
Well,
good.
cool, guys.
Speaking of band,
This is
Ross is
wonderful.
supposed to be this coming
Yeah.
month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
All need
Monday or
people
what?
like Jeff.
No,
Yeah.
somewhere.
Everybody needs a
I think
Jeff.
it was in July, wasn't it?
This is.
It's
coming
like a
July.
Wednesday.
This coming July.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a Wednesday in July.
Okay,
I've got
I
you
gotta
booked
get a
for.
hold of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Speaking of music.
Well, thanks guys for coming. I mean,
Yeah.
this is awesome. And thank you, Eric, for sticking around. And
Yeah, and if
Yeah.
you guys want to stick around for a little bit afterwards, we can go into more detail about like the different mics that we have here and like how you can use them to record and things like that. We do have our 80D DSLR camera here, which, you know, it's a photo camera, but it shoots really nice video. The thing that's really nice about these cameras is you can have interchangeable lenses, and depending on how good the aperture rating is on the lens, you can get that really, really nice depth of field where you get that blown out cinematic look, and it can look super nice for doing interviews. So you know, keep that in mind if you want to learn how to use this. Ari uses it quite a bit. And there's a lot of different ways. So the downside of DSLRs is recording the audio. So there is an input on this camera on the side right here. There's one for headphones, which is great because a lot of older DSLRs don't have a headphone jack. But then there's the microphone there, which is just it's a 3.5 millimeter jack. And that's what this is right here, just like a headphone jack kind of thing. So this is one of those small microphones like this, although this is higher quality than that one. And this can just mount up onto the top of the camera there, and then you can plug in the microphone to the side. And that's going to be really good for like B-roll, getting those NAT sounds and things like that. If you're in a pinch, or maybe you're doing like interviews on the street with people and you don't want to take the time to like mic people up because you're running around getting a bunch of interviews, this will work good for that. You'll be able to pick them up pretty well. We can also, we've got some adapters, so we can adapt the XLRs on the lavaliers to a 3.5 millimeter. When you do that, you're getting just a single source of audio. It comes through as a mono recording. So if you want it stereo, you got to do that in post. Or you can use the external audio recorder. So that too, actually I don't think I have the right mount for it, but you can mount that onto the hot shoe mount of the cameras and have it up here, and then you've got those two XLR inputs on the back, and it's ends up being basically the same thing as this. It's just that you are recording it separately.
Well, that's a 4-channel. You can do the 2 mics and 2 inputs, right?
On this one?
Yes.
Yes. So you have, you could do the 2 mics on top and then the 2 on the bottom.
I don't think you can run them simultaneously though.
Well, you should be able to, because here.
I think I can on mine. Is that a Q4?
Because there's 4 tracks.
Yeah.
So you can.
Okay.
That's how that
You
would
can set it
work.
I might be thinking of mine because I have the older version of that, and I think mine can only do
2 at a
either
time.
just the inputs or the mics.
Sometimes I'll, like in concert, I'll run the 2
way.
ones on top, and then I'll do line inputs
You guys want to check
into
it out?
the XLRs.
So when you record separate audio, sorry, I didn't mean to jump off your point. I've done that before too. I've got an audio friend that has helped me record concerts before, and he just uses that exact model and just runs a line into it.
Okay, is that easy to dump off into the edit machine and that type of
Oh,
thing?
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, it just records as a WAV file. But the thing when you're recording audio separately, you want to make sure that you have some type of sync point. It's hard to do when you're doing a concert because you just basically have to hit record when you think the band's going to come up on stage, and then in post, you got to find like right when they hit that first chord or something like that, or first words into the microphone. That's your sync point. But like those clapboards and stuff that you see, that works as a sync point, or just clapping. You know, make sure you're seen in front of the camera, and then you clap next to the mic source, whatever that is, the lavalier or whatever. That becomes your sync point in post. So you find that visual cue and that audio cue to sync up your audio.
That's really helpful if you have multiple cameras. So some, like even Care 11, they used 11 cameras on one shoot. And 11, and they needed to sync it all up at the same time. So they all went like that, and they synced it all to that one clap, because in post-production, and again, I wish if we pulled it up, you'd see where the rise is, and it's usually that really high peak because the clap is super loud. Sorry, Hunter. Sorry, guys. That's probably really unnecessarily loud. Anyway, that clap is going to be one of the highest peaks in your audio visually. So then you can just kind of move the tracks around until they're lined up in post, and that way visually you can see it and then listen to it to see if
That's it.
it's, you know. So that's how that clapping part, or you know, the sync part will
Did y'all see
work.
this?
Yep, and yeah, I think they
Did
did.
you guys? Yeah. Okay.
And going back to a line input, I was going to make a slide about it and I forgot, but we can discuss it. So these cameras, most of these.
What
these
is
type
line,
of,
Ben?
So what a line feed is, or line input on the camera, is when you are, for example, you're shooting a concert, and obviously at a concert there's going to be someone running an audio board there, and they're mixing that audio. They're professional, audio engineers. They're mixing that audio to get the best mix of sound between all of the musicians, right? So obviously it's going to be the best audio source. It's going to sound way better than any microphones that you can set up to try to record that concert. So what you can do is you can go to the audio person and say, hey, is it all right if I get a line feed from you? And that's basically just an output from their audio board that has all of that mixed audio going into that output, and then it's just a single source, just an XLR cable running into your camera here. The thing about line feeds is they output from audio boards at a super high level. So when if you run it in, so when you're looking here, you've got the sources for these audio inputs here. It's asking what the source is. You've got a microphone, just a standard microphone. You've got mic plus 48 volts, which is known as phantom power, and what that is doing is it's taking power from the battery of the camera and it's sending power into your microphone. Some microphones require phantom power, like this one. This one doesn't have anywhere where you can put a battery in it, so it has to have phantom power. Some microphones can do either you can put a battery in them or you can use phantom power. Some of them don't need phantom power at all. Anyway, the last source here is line. So what the camera is doing when you're taking that line feed and it's running into one of these inputs here, if you leave it on mic or mic plus 48 volts, again, that source, that audio source coming from that board is coming in super hot. So if you leave it on microphone, you're gonna be way in the red and it's gonna sound horrible. So when you put it up into line, what it's doing is it's attenuating that level down to an appropriate level that the camera prefers. And you can still, adjust your levels a little bit here and there if it's at that point, if it's coming in a little bit too low or something, you can kind of bring it up.
So what's the difference between line and input one and input two?
So line is just a type of source, an audio source. So you've got your microphones, that's one source, and then you have your line feed, which is a source coming from an audio board.
And you can do that on both.
You can do it on either input. You can do it on input one. You can do it on input one or input two. On the flip side of that, if you just went out and recorded a concert and you have this set up to line, and then the next day you go out and you record some interviews and you're using just a microphone, they're going to sound super quiet. And you might be like, oh, why is that? Why can't I hear them? I have my levels way up. They sound really, really quiet. That's because you're still on line, so it's still attenuating that level down. And so it's dropping the mic level super, super low. And so you just have to pop that back into either mic or mic plus 48.
So the line is the source of.
It's just a source of audio. When you get an output from an audio board and you run a cable from the audio board to your camera, that's a line called a line feed.
Now, can you have one input be a line and the other one a microphone?
Good question, Jeff. I know you know the answer, but thank you for bringing
Well,
it
I think you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
One thing too, if you can do that and you're doing a concert, sometimes you're going to shoot cutaways of people listening to the music far away from the band.
Yep.
At that point, you probably want to switch, if you're doing a documentary at least, to what the mic is hearing.
Yep.
And you can choose which audio track you want to use.
Yep. You can choose which audio track you want to use, and then going back to that redundancy as well. Maybe you're recording a concert and the audio person accidentally hits the mute button for their output, which is the output that they're sending to you. You lost that track, and now you don't have any audio. If that's the only audio coming into your camera, you got nothing. It's blank. Yeah. But if you've got one line feed running into one input, and then you've got a backup microphone on the other input, then you always have that backup audio.
Make sure you talk to the audio guy and make sure what kind of a audio input you want into your thing, because they can give you a sub mix, or they can give you a feed that are going to the mains, which is probably what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, what time are we at? 8:40?
My brain is
Yeah,
shutting
I think
off.
everybody's
Yeah.
brain is gonna start like melting if we keep going.
Brilliant.
So,
Guys, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you again for coming. I hope you learned some
you.
stuff. If you have any other questions about any of this stuff at any time, call one of us. And if you're out in the field shooting and it's during the time that we're open and you're like, I can't hear this person for whatever reason, we can try to walk you through it over the phone. That's what we're here for. So.
or stop by
Uh,
BCAT or Edina City
Sure.
Hall,
Ben, Jeff,